Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first ever collaborative panel event. My name is Voke. I'm a grade 12 student at Kelvin High School, and I'm the marketing director at Project Pulse Winnipeg this year. We're so excited to welcome Let's Talk Science and their panelists here today. I would just like to remind everyone that this panel is being recorded and we'll be posting it on our website. So if you decide to keep your camera on during this session, we ask that you fill out and sign the consent forms that were emailed to you earlier today and send them back to us as soon as possible. Continuing on, we are joined here today with the rest of the Project Pulse executive team who are in the audience, if you guys want to give us a small wave. And Gabriella from Let's Talk Science, if you want to give a wave too. Thank you. But before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our panelists, Madison, Justin, and Joshua, for being here today with us, and all of you guys, the participants, for being here as well. I'll be running all the behind the scenes aspects of today, so if you think of any questions during the panel, feel free to send them to me in the chat, and we'll add them to the list of upcoming questions. That's all from me, and I'll pass it over to Sasha.
Thank you for that introduction, Volke. So hi, everyone. My name is Sasha Houle, and I'm a grade 12 student at Tech Rock High School. I'm the events director on behalf of Project Pulse Winnipeg, and will be helping lead this event alongside Volke, our marketing director. As previously stated, we're very excited for you to all witness the amazing collection of speakers we have gathered here today. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce one of our lovely panelists, Justin Lin. Justin Lin is a first-year medical student at the University of Toronto. He finished his 3-year Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Manitoba prior to entering med school. He was actually a member of Project Pulse Winnipeg's organizing committee in 2016 and acted as an assistant coordinator with Let's Talk Science at the University of Manitoba from 2018 to 2019. He is now currently the VP External Affairs Junior of the Medical Society at U of T and has a keen interest in translational research. In his spare time, he loves playing basketball, soccer, and ultimate frisbee, as well as the piano. Justin, thank you for being here, and feel free to start your discussion.
Oh, thanks for the introduction, Sasha. Thanks to the organizing committee for having me. Thanks to Project Pulse and Let's Talk Science for inviting me, and hi to my fellow panelists, Josh and Madison. So yeah, I guess I don't have too much to add onto that introduction, but I'm a first-year medical student at U of T. I did high school in Winnipeg. I've lived in Winnipeg for the vast majority of my life. In fact, I'm in Winnipeg right now because things are pretty shut down in Toronto. But I'm happy to talk about my experience at UofM. I did their general science program, so a 3-year degree. I'm happy to talk about how I got to where I am now as a first-year medical student, and happy to talk about my experience so far. But fair warning, it is a little limited because everything has basically been online so far, so it'll definitely be limited by that lens. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to answer people's questions.
Thank you for walking us through that, what you're going to talk about today. Our second speaker, Madison Wong, is a first-year PharmD student at the University of Manitoba. She has recently completed her Bachelor of Science through the University of Manitoba as well, majoring in genetics with a minor in chemistry. She has been interested in science since high school, but did not have her mind made up on her career path until much later into university. She knew that she wanted to be able to help people, and combined with her interest in science, that is what sparked her interest in the healthcare field. As a pharmacist, she hopes to make positive impacts on individuals' health and lives while increasing the public's overall science literacy. Throughout her time in university and high school, she volunteered with different organizations such as St. Boniface Hospital, UMSU, Science Rendezvous, CanU, and Let's Talk Science. She is currently on the coordinating team for Girls in Science for the second time. which is an event put on by Let's Talk Science, promoting careers in STEM to girls in middle school. In her spare time, she enjoys baking, watching skincare YouTube, and anime. She is looking forward to sharing her experiences and answering all of your questions. Thank you, Madison. Feel free to begin whenever.
Well, hi. Thanks, Sasha, and thanks for Project Pulse for inviting me. Thanks, Gabriella, for thinking of me for this event. Sasha, you pretty much covered everything there. Yeah, I'm a first-year PharmD student, and I graduated actually just back in the fall of 2020 with my undergraduate degree. It was a 4-year degree, but I finished it in 5 years. It worked out pretty well because I ended up getting into the pharmacy program just right after. So that worked out pretty well. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about the undergrad experience, about maybe not knowing what you're doing, because I often felt that way during undergrad, and kind of that stress of having to figure out what you want to do. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Madison. Our final panelist is Joshua Sacopla, and he graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology in 2019 at the University of Manitoba. He is now continuing his studies as a medical radiation technologist at Red River College. Besides his academic career, he has also played important roles on campus, such as being a Let's Talk Science site coordinator and a St. Paul's College campus ministry assistant from 2017 to 2019. He was also a Canadian Catholic Student Association president from 2018 to 2019. He actively engages in producing multiple volunteer and outreach opportunities for every age group to participate in, while he individually was a volunteer for Canadian Blood Services, CanU, and St. John's Ambulance. Joshua, we are so happy to have you with us today. Go ahead and begin whenever you would like.
Alrighty, so my name is Josh. I'm currently a second-year student at Red River College for the medical radiology program. So what that is basically is that I'm the one responsible for taking x-rays for all kinds of diseases, injuries, whatsoever that comes into the hospital. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the program itself, or career paths and different paths, because I had multiple ideas of what career I would have chose back then, but I'll help you decide, or not really help you decide, but like help guide you through what kind of career best fits for you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for sharing that. You guys have so much insight, and I'm so grateful that you guys are here to share today. So now moving on with our question period about their lives as students, their Let's Talk Science involvement, and other topics. Gabriella, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, so first of all, we're going to start with questions on you guys' student life and sort of, and questions pertaining to that. So our first question is, what was your undergrad journey like? So I guess Justin can start since he was the first one who started with the introduction.
Yeah, sure. So I guess pretty open-ended question. I found it overall to be a very positive experience at UofM. So I took I think everyone's journey varies depending on how many courses you decide to take, how many things you decide to do outside of school. And I think that, at least for me, just to give everyone an idea, I did 5 courses every term, which is a full course load. But I think that the general trend is most people take 4 courses per semester. But I found that it was overall a positive experience. I thought I learned many new things. I thought I picked up new study habits, which was nice. And I tried to get involved in as many campus activities as I could, because I found that that was a good way to find new friends. Like I met Josh, who's a really good friend through Let's Talk Science. So I feel like getting yourself out there and doing extracurricular activities like Let's Talk Science. I was also involved with the student council at the University of Manitoba in the science faculty. It's called the Science Students Association. And so I found that through those activities, I was able to form a community of friends. What else can I comment on? Yeah, if anyone has any specific questions about courses or like degrees, things like that, I'd be happy to expand on that. But otherwise, I guess it's a little difficult because I'm not sure what everyone's background is, like whether I'm talking to high school students or middle school students. But hopefully that gives everyone an idea. And in the question period, feel free to ask more directed questions that might be more helpful.
Guess I'll pick up on top of that. So I did 4 and 4, I think most of the terms. I did a couple of summer courses as well. And I found that 4 courses for me was more than enough. I don't know how Justin did it with the 5. I don't know how people do it with the 5. So it's definitely like, don't force yourself to do the 5 to make sure that you finish in a certain amount of time. I liked taking my time. But yeah, for the extracurriculars, I mean, I volunteered at St. Boniface Hospital, I think 2 or 3 years of my undergrad. That was a fun thing to do. I did it about every week. It kind of gave me some experience interacting with patients. I mean, I was mostly volunteering in the hospital gift shop for the time, but a lot of the patients come in just looking for someone to talk to. So that was really awesome to do. On campus, I got involved with an event called Science Rendezvous. It's a big event held in May or end of April. And that was an event kind of trying to promote science and art coming together. To kids and the general public. I found it a lot of fun. I also was a general volunteer for UMSU for a while, and we kind of promoted stuff happening on campus. That was a lot of fun. And then I'm a second year volunteer for Let's Talk Science this year. Honestly, I wish I joined earlier. I think I was just shy going in because I definitely had heard of Let's Talk Science before, but I didn't end up joining until my final year of undergrad. But I wish I joined earlier because it is a lot of fun. You do meet new people, and you meet people outside of the Faculty of Science too. Like, it's not, Let's Talk Science is not just for science students. And I thought that was awesome because, I don't know, when you're within a faculty, I feel like you often only end up speaking to other people within your faculty. So that was a good experience of talking to people outside of your own faculty. And yeah, Josh, go ahead.
All right. So my undergrad years were fun, very stressful, of course. I think they all are. When I first started my first year, I was one of those shy boys who always sat at the back, especially in high school as well. I never really got into extracurricular activities or whatsoever because I figured, why am I investing my time on something where I'm not getting paid that, right? So I was like, all right, it's not the best thing to do. And then I got into university. First year, I saw Let's Talk Science do a presentation in front of me, and I was like, okay, weird. And then the following year, I was like, okay, maybe I need to, volunteer, because I figured, what if I apply to professional school? I need something to put on my resume or whatsoever. So I figured I'd try Let's Talk Science out. And then turns out it's like the best thing that ever happened to me at UofM. It gave me lots of connections inside and outside the campus. So you get connections from multiple businesses, companies, lots of people from multiple organizations as well. And up to this date, I'm still in touch with multiple organizations that I'm still part of. So with Madison and Justin, branching up from what they said, I took, on my first year, I thought I was that top dog, and I figured, you know what, I'm gonna take 5 courses. 5 courses on the first semester and second semester. Let me just tell you, it's not for everyone, because it wasn't for me. So I took 4 classes every semester from that onwards, and took some summer classes as well. So one thing that you should always keep in mind is that you don't need to rush things because everything's gonna happen at its own time. So yeah, so that's basically much it. One thing that you'll enjoy at when you go to your undergrad degree are the labs. Labs are fun. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay.
Yeah, that was a great point, guys. So I feel like a lot of high school students don't really know that like taking 5-5 isn't super common in university. So it's great that you guys touched on that too. And also on like the topic of getting connections with Let's Talk Science. Let's Talk Science does a lot of big events where we invite professors to do a keynote talk or even for roundtable discussions. So it's great to be emailing your professors and introducing yourself as part of an organization because they sort of pick your name out, if you know what I mean, like in a class of like 300 people, if they see your name, they're like, oh, that's the person involved with Let's Talk Science. So you kind of also stand out in that way. So Madison mentioned earlier the feeling of not knowing what you're doing or like the stresses of having to know what to do after your undergrad. So my next question is, when did you realize that you wanted to pursue what you're pursuing now? And do you have any tips for students regarding choosing a career path?
Might I suggest we start with Josh this time and switch up the order?
Alrighty. So for me, it was a roller coaster ride actually. First year, I figured, you know what? Everyone's going for med school. I'm gonna go for med school. I looked at everyone, I looked at all my competition. I was like, med school. But I kept going. I kept going until my third year. On my third year, I figured, wait, I want to specialize in radiology when I become a doctor, right? So I figured, okay, so those radiologists are the ones who take x-rays. That's where I was wrong. As I looked into it, it was the technologists who do the ones who take pictures of the bones and everything. And so I figured, whoa, did I just waste all of that time because I had the wrong career in mind? But besides that, I actually thought of going into physiotherapy. What else? Not into pharmacy because I dislike chemistry. That's why I did a biology degree, tried to get away from chemistry as much as I can, but ended up taking biochem and organic chem. But that's besides the point. So I'd say that once you do your first year, it's not the end of the world if you don't know what to do. That's what first year is. You're going to try out all these courses. You're going to try out which one fits your personality well. I figured that biology was my strong point because I remember back in high school, everything was, I don't want to say everything, but I excelled in everything. But once you get into university, it's a whole different ballgame because I remember wanting to do, I figured chemistry wasn't that hard back in high school. And then once you get into university, it's a whole different ballgame. So it's more of testing the waters. So never be afraid to take courses because although money is involved, but you'll pay that off later. All right, next.
All right. So yeah, in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do, I don't know, I don't want to say like I figured out later than most people because that might not be the case, but I would say I didn't I wasn't fully set on pharmacy until about, I guess, 2-ish years ago, because maybe a little more than 2 years ago, because yeah, my first year, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I liked science, so I was like what's it called, direct admission to the Faculty of Science. So I started in science. I knew I wanted to be something in science. I could not see myself in any other faculty as like, nope, not for me. I need to find something within science that I like. And again, like Josh said, in high school, I felt like I excelled in most of the sciences then. And I was like, okay, you know, you have those high school teachers that try to scare you about how hard university is. And yes, it is hard, but it's not as hard as they make it sound. I will tell you that. Another funny thing that Josh said was how he doesn't like chemistry, so he never considered pharmacy. And you know what? Chemistry, it's not actually my strong suit. My strong suit was actually in like genetics and microbiome, but here I am in pharmacy. It's not, I wouldn't say it's two chemistries, but I'm technically only in one chem class right now. But yeah, I would say I probably figured it out about 2 or more years ago, where I was like, you know, I think I want to be somewhere in healthcare, but I don't think I want to be a doctor. That sounds like it's not really for me. So I was like, okay, like a lot of people think, okay, maybe dentistry. And then I was like, I don't really like people's mouths or the thought of being in people's mouth. Yeah, it wasn't for me. So then they were advertising the new PharmD program because actually recently pharmacy at the UofM at least used to be a bachelor's degree, and now it got converted over to a PharmD program. So there's a little more in terms of the admissions. I think before it was just GPA and you have to write an essay to get in, and now you have to write a exam called the PCAT. That was fun. So yeah, you kind of, I'm saying 2 years because I know I wrote my PCAT 2 summers ago now. So I would have had to figure out that I was going to be studying for that over the summer before that happened. But it was definitely a long process for me. And I would say to not worry too much if you don't know what you're doing, like directly into university, because it will be scary when you first come in and you're going to be surrounded by people being like, I'm going to be a doctor all the time. It's going to happen all the time. But yeah, just do your own thing, figure out what you do want to do on your own. Yeah, Justin, you can go now.
So those are fascinating stories. Thanks for sharing, Josh and Madison. So yeah, I think that all three of us had very different experiences, and I think that what that highlights is that everyone has a different timeline. Like there is no set timeline. Like you need to know by this day or you need to know by this year. Like it's flexible. Everyone finds out a different time, but you just got to have the confidence in yourself to know that eventually you will find it, what you're interested in. And I think that one way to help you do that is to choose a variety of courses and also to get yourself out there on campus and try exploring new things. So I think that that would be my main piece of advice. At least for me, I think that my story was quite a bit drier than the other two panelists. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to pursue a healthcare career, and I think that that is probably a common thread among many of us, where we know that this is kind of the broad career interest that we have. I think that by the end of high school, I had a pretty good idea that I wanted to pursue medicine, and that was the way that I kind of geared the courses I took and the degree planning that I did. And so for me, that's what I meant by it was a bit drier, and that I think I had a pretty good idea, and it ended up working out for me. But as I mentioned, it's really like everyone finds out at different times. I was lucky in that I guess that idea came to me a little earlier, but there is no set timeline. So I guess yeah, that I was going in circles there, but yeah.
Yeah, those are all good points, guys. I feel like I have nothing else to say other than great points. So just keep your options open, I guess, is the takeaway from what the panelists have said. So now that let's say like you're going off of a timeline now that you kind of decided what you want to do. So with your 3 different sort of programs, how is the admission process like? Like Madison mentioned that for pharmacy you have to write a PCAT. You know, like what are the steps to getting into your program, and what are tips that you would say really worked for you when applying into these programs?
We'll start off with Madison. Oh wait,
Okay,
Shirley said that.
I mean, I can go into it a
Yeah,
little
you
bit
could go
more.
ahead.
Basically, what the PharmD program is at the U of M currently is they take 3 things into account. They take your GPA, which I believe is still the #1 thing they look at. They take your PCAT, which is the second most looked at thing, and then they take the essay. Except I can't speak too much about the essay now because of COVID, they actually canceled our essay writing period. So I never actually got to write the essay, so I can't talk too much about that. But for the PCAT, like they have several writing periods, I think over the summer, and then another writing period in the winter. I decided to write mine in the summer because that's when I have the most off time. I think I ended up writing mine mid-July, so I started studying seriously for it in probably early May, which was, yeah, so after like all the exam finals of the previous year, I think I actually went on a trip first. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, time to study. So yeah, I spent my time studying for that. It's a long exam. I think it's 4 hours, although I think the MCAT's maybe twice as long as that. But yeah, it was a tough time. I mean, studying, but you get used to it from studying for university, and you kind of try to break up your time, focusing on different topics. And then I think there are different prerequisite classes that you need to be that are required for admissions into pharmacy now. But I think if you're following the path of really any science degree right now, I'm pretty sure you'll cover those prereqs within your first 2 or 3 years. Yeah, like it wasn't a big thing for me since I was already nearing the end of my degree by the time I was applying. Although I know some people in my program, they pretty much only did the prereq classes, wrote the PCAT, and then got in right away. That's not what I did, but yeah, that's basically the overview of getting into pharmacy now.
Okay, I guess I can go next. So just as a heads up, I applied to 5 different medical schools last year, and each of them had a slightly different admission criteria. So I guess to simplify this, I'll speak about 2 of them. I'll speak about the U of M, and I'll speak about U of T because they're slightly different. So for the University of Manitoba admission criteria, they look at your GPA, they look at your MCAT, which is the medical college admission test, I think is what it stands for. It's this, it's a bit of a beast. It's like 7 hours, but it's a standardized test that everyone has to take to get into medical school, save a few, I think. But and then there's also a Casper test, which is kind of looking at your, it's hard to explain, but it's a test that you take on the computer. It's to test your ethical reasoning kind of thing, where they give you usually an ethical scenario and you have to type out an answer. So those are the 3 components, and then based on those 3, they'll choose a short list of individuals to interview, and then after the interview process, there's the selection. So U of T is slightly different. So pre-interview, they look at your GPA, they look at your MCAT, they also look at your extracurricular activities, which is a little interesting. So everyone has to list out their extracurricular activities, and they have some magic to compare those. And you also have to write 7 essays for U of T, so it's quite a rigorous application process. And then after that, they choose individuals to interview based on that, and then after the interview as the final selection process. So unfortunately, quite quite an involved application process. Also, it is quite a competitive one. Like I think at U of T, they usually get around 4,000 applicants, and our class is about 260 people. And I think at U of M, around 1,000 applicants per year, and about 100 get in the class. So it's a pretty competitive process, but if anyone has further questions about that, I'd definitely be more than happy to answer those. I guess I'll pass it off to Josh.
For mine, it requires, so there's two things they look at, or three actually. So you do an entrance exam based off all the prereqs that you did. And secondly, they invite you for an MMI. So that's a multiple mini interview. So there's 8 rooms where I think you have to pass 6 to be considered. So there's 8 rooms where they ask you about ethical questions as well. So what would you do in this kind of situation? They're all open-ended questions. And then with that, that's pretty much it. I know that having a background in lots of extracurricular activities would help you lots in during MMIs because you have lots to talk about. For admissions, it's quite competitive as well. From what I could remember, there was around 250 to 300 applicants, and there's only 36 of us that were accepted. So I didn't expect it to be that competitive. So it's more or less mainly banking on MMIs. That's what they mainly look at. That's pretty much it.
Wow, that is some rigorous like application processes. But I mean, like, there's nothing that you can accomplish without hard work, right? So now that you guys are in, like, what would you say is a typical day in the life like in your program? I know it's COVID and like everything's probably online, especially for like Madison and Justin, who are first year students. You guys probably don't have like much experience with in-person lectures. But right now, like even during COVID, like how do you kind of balance that, like, you know, having to go to school and like sort of your personal life all in the same sort of, you know, in the same like house? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go. Oh,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Okay. For me, since it's my second year, I had in-person classes. So on one semester, I had 8 classes with 2 labs. So like you really need your coffee. And there are tests every week. Wow. So anyways, it's a very you really got to get into it. You can't really slack. The in-person ones, those were fun because sometimes we do cahoots. So since it's a small class, we get to know each other. So even the instructors. So you get close with everyone. So it doesn't really become a very overwhelming experience. Either everyone's suffering, so it kind of made me feel at ease because I'm not the only one just dying there. But uh, before COVID, we also had labs to do on each other. So for an X-ray, you need to practice your positioning because you need the most accurate position just so you can see certain angles of the bones, the joints, whatsoever, because that's what the radiologist would read. Because if you don't get a good image, they'll come up to you and say, "Hey, take this picture again." It's just gonna hurt your feelings. It happened to me. So more or less, it's overwhelming, but it's very doable. So I guess that's just my experience with in person. But when COVID hit, I was nearing the end of my first year. So we just did all our exams online and then just listened to lectures online as well. And the very early mornings you just go off video, go off mic, and just kind of like go back to sleep. But next one, that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'll go now. So yeah, since I'm a first year student, I've only had the online life of pharmacy so far. The only things that I've had to do in person are a couple labs. I think last term I probably went into downtown Bannatyne campus for about 12 labs. But those were fun. I mean, like, it was nice actually seeing people, even if we had to wear masks and goggles and all that. But we got to, you know, practice making pills. We got to practice making a type of ointment. We got to make lip balm one time. It was a lot of fun. But for online classes, oh yeah, I guess I should say how many classes I'm in. Last term, I was in 7 courses, and this term I'm in 8. And then I think I was in, of those, 2 of them were considered lab courses. I think 2, yeah, 2 were considered lab courses. So it is very busy. And it was like another jump up from undergrad, I say, like from high school to undergrad, that was a big jump between like workload. And then now from undergrad to this program, it was another pretty big jump on balancing so many courses. But I think it is manageable. Like I'm not suffering. Obviously sometimes you feel that way, especially around exam time when it's like, oh, I have like 7 exams to write in like a week and a half period. This is gonna be fun. But it's been good. And I can't wait to go back to in person, because it's not that fun when you're just listening to your prof that won't even turn on his camera speaking for like 2 hours. But yeah, I'd say a really good tip for learning online is actually attending the live classes. And something that I've been doing to maintain that is I try to take flashcard notes while the lecture is going on. So I make sure that I'm paying attention during the lecture, because during my undergrad, I had a little bit of a habit of falling asleep during class, which I really wanted to kick this year, especially with so many courses. So yeah, definitely try to pay attention as much as possible. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Justin there.
Cool. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, my experience is quite limited by COVID, and it's quite unfortunate. I haven't really been able to meet many of my classmates, other than I went to a few anatomy labs in person. And next week, actually, we have our first in-person clinical skills sessions where we learn some physical exam skills, which is quite alarming that we're only starting that now, but I guess that's how things are working in COVID. So I guess just briefly about the curriculum. I think I should have mentioned earlier, but in case people didn't know, medicine is a 4-year program, so I'm in the first year. And everything in medicine is pass-fail, which is kind of interesting. So if you meet the benchmark, it actually doesn't matter if you score 100% versus a borderline pass. So that's an interesting part about the medical curriculum. And we'll usually have a test maybe once every 1 to 3 weeks. And our curriculum really varies. Like there isn't a set schedule, so to speak, but it's usually we have so lecture content, and then we also have anatomy labs, and that is quite a bit of material as well. We also have some sessions on ethics, sessions on leadership, and sessions on, for example, health and community. So learning about things like the social determinants of health. So it's quite scattered. I would say that the two, or rather the 3 consistent components are lecture material, anatomy lab, and clinical skills. So those are the 3 consistent components in our curriculum. But I hope that answers questions. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So thank you for all your answers about your student life, guys, and for opening up about your advice and how it's like being a student in your program. So I guess we'll just move on to the last question here about sort of your extracurriculars. So aside from LTS, you guys were all involved in so many things in your undergrad. So I'm just wondering, like, if you have any advice or sort of the steps you took in like sort of finding out about these different opportunities, and say like how would a first year student in university get involved in volunteer and leadership roles around campus, and sort of any resources that they can use to find out about these opportunities.
I can try to tackle this one first. So I think that it is quite overwhelming. I remember when I first entered university, it's pretty scary when you enter like a faculty of 5,000 and a university population that's like close to 30,000. It's pretty scary. You don't really know who to talk to. But I think that especially going in as a first year, it's important to realize that everyone's in the same boat. And for me, I think that one piece of advice is I feel that it's beneficial to get a starting point. So I feel like if you join one organization, that often opens up the door to hear about other opportunities. So I feel like, for example, often clubs will advertise in classes, they'll do class presentations, or sometimes if you walk on campus and you might see some posters advertising things like that. I think that it's important to keep your eyes open. And then, as I mentioned, if you jump onto one opportunity, I feel like often those connections or the people that you meet will often, you'll naturally learn about other opportunities or other organizations that you can get involved in. So that's what I would, those are the comments I'd make about that. And I'll pass it off to whoever wants to go next.
I guess I can go next. I'm trying to remember actually where I first heard about certain things. Let's Talk Science. I feel like it was probably just like one of the posters you guys had up. I think just there's poster boards everywhere, and there's like a smattering of so many different posters, and I probably noticed it. And I probably was aware of the program early on, but like I said, I was shy, timid. I didn't know if that was what I wanted to do, but I would encourage people to like put yourself out there and be like, maybe just try it. Maybe even if you don't like it, like it's not a full commitment. And that was one of the things that I liked about Let's Talk Science. Like with a lot of other places where you volunteer, you have to make a certain amount of hours a week, and it's not like that in Let's Talk Science. You can sign up when you're free, sign up when you feel like it. You can go through a bout of like volunteering all the time, and then go through periods if you're really busy and not have to volunteer, or like only do big events, or only do coordinating teams or something like that. I'd say another good place is probably social media. I know the university posts about a lot of different clubs and groups, although I guess that's not how I found it, because I technically only joined most social media platforms this past year. But I think I heard about a lot through different friends. Like once you start talking to more people on campus, they'll hear about different programs, or like their friends will be on different programs, and then they'll be like, hey, do you want to do this together? Because originally when I joined Let's Talk Science, I think it was one of my friends that was like, hey, did you hear about this? Did you see that poster? I think they posted about the event on UofM, which is like a university portal site that everyone uses to access their classes right now, but usually access all of your lecture material and stuff. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So I ended up doing, me and a group of friends ended up running one of the booths for that big day event. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
For me, it was more on your first week of school or in your first year. There is a place called University Center. It is where all the booths are of all these volunteer opportunities, and they're all gonna come at you. They'll be like, hey, you wanna volunteer for this? Here's bubble tea. Here's a coupon. And you're like, sign me up. So honestly, you'll see it everywhere. If you don't see one in your first year, is that even possible? Because honestly, they're everywhere. There's also a site where you can see all the volunteer opportunities from different clubs as well. You can join different clubs. I know there's like multiple game clubs as well, like a chess club, League of Legends club, all these clubs that you can get part of. And then, yeah, like Madison and Justin said earlier, you'll meet people that volunteer for other organizations or groups that you can get part of. I know when I was an LTS volunteer, I found out from other people that you can apply for Blood, which is partnered with the Canadian Blood Services. So I did that. So basically, all these curricular activities are coming at you from left to right, even in class, even midway in class, or even after class. They just don't stop. They're gonna keep coming at you. So it's overwhelming at first because obviously you're just like, am I even worthy? Because that's what I thought to myself. Like, can I even commit? I have all these classes. Like I have all these classes. I need to maintain this GPA. I need to maintain this, that. But honestly, if you do extracurricular, you'll have some time off studying and you'll actually feel good about yourself too, because you have something to, like an outlet, like something different from studying. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, those are some great points. I feel like that's all I have to say whenever you guys finish talking, but yeah, that is true. They do sometimes give out bubble tea to get you to join their club. So look out for those booths, guys. So hopefully you guys are able to implement some of the advice that they gave today. Thank you for giving such great answers. And I think we can open the floor to questions now.
Yep. So we do only have a couple more minutes, but we are going to get in as many questions as we can. So the first one is coming from the chat, and it is asking, what is the difference between 3-year or 4-year university degrees in terms of admission to the medical school? So this is probably more geared towards Justin.
Sure, good question. Yeah, so a 3-year at the U of M is a general science degree, and a 4-year can be a major or an honors. I guess I won't talk about that too much because the question, I guess, focused more on like for medical school admissions. So it depends on the school is the short answer. But for U of M, they will accept any Bachelor of Science degree prior to admission. So if you have a Bachelor of Science before you get into medical school, then that's all they need. There is functionally no difference between a 3-year and a 4-year. And in some other schools like U of T, you don't even need a degree. You actually only need to do 3 years worth of courses. So I guess long answer short is no, it doesn't matter whether it's a 3-year or 4-year, both are considered Bachelor of Science degrees.
Thank you, Justin. So the next question is more geared towards Madison, and it is, what advice do you have for someone who feels challenged by the math parts of chemistry? Do you have any study tips or things that helped you to get comfortable with it?
That is a good question. So, I mean, I always kind of liked math. I know a lot of people don't, and that's completely valid. I know a lot of people don't like math. For chemistry, I'd say the biggest thing is doing the practice problems. Like I know a lot of people, they just try to look off the PowerPoint presentations, and some profs, it depends. They'll give practice problems maybe, but I know a lot of profs don't. So a big resource for me was actually the textbook. And I know a lot of the times people don't read their textbooks, but for first year classes especially, I did rely on my textbooks a lot more. And a lot of them have really good practice problems in them. And often when you talk to people, they will also have some answer key resources, which might be a little more helpful for you. In terms of math specifically, the U of M I know has a math help center, and you can go to them for specific problems. I know like they are more like math specific, but I'm sure they could help you with anything relating to chemistry math as well, because math is math. But yeah, I would just say like practice problems, like as many as you can possibly do to prepare yourself.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Madison. So the next question is, do you suggest volunteering in a high school? And this is geared toward anyone, so anyone can start.
I guess I can start again. Yes, I would recommend volunteering in high school. I loved volunteering in high school. And like when you don't realize this until you get to university about how much more time, I guess, you have in high school. I know it probably doesn't feel like that if you're currently in high school and going through classes and stuff, but you do have more time in high school to volunteer and get involved. I know when I was in high school, my final year, I was student council president, so I was running student council. I was part of the school musical for all 4 years. Not actually in the musical, I was doing backstage stuff. I did yearbook, I think 3 of my years. That was also volunteer based. I was involved in a youth and philanthropy group. What else did I do? I did grad committee in my final year. Just I was like trying to get involved in as many things as possible. And again, that's how you meet new people. That's how you make connections. It was probably the best part of my high school experience. So I would say yes, do volunteer.
I don't know if anyone remembers, but I didn't quite volunteer when I was in high school, but I wish I did. Because now there are lots of volunteer opportunities in high school, especially like Project Pulse as well, because that's pretty cool. Um, so I can't really branch off of that. So please volunteer as much as you can.
Yeah, nothing much to add. I think that they covered it, but also don't feel too much pressure to overextend yourself. Just do what's comfortable. Hopefully, find something that's of interest to you, and I think that that'll be a lot of fun for high school. But yeah, nothing much to add.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. The next question comes from the chat as well, and it is, what sort of undergraduate degrees help getting into medical school? So this is towards Justin.
Sure. Okay. So I guess the question is what kind of undergraduate degrees helps? Okay, okay. So to clarify, it actually doesn't matter what undergrad degree you have prior to entering med school. I don't think there's a single undergrad, I don't think there's a single medical program in Canada that requires you to do a certain type of undergrad degree. Any degree is fine. So you can do an arts degree, you can do like music, engineering, anything, as long as you are able to satisfy the MCAT requirement. So actually, you're free to pursue whatever you like, even if ultimately you want to pursue medicine. But to answer the question of like what helps getting into med school, I think that something that's more science focused is probably going to help you the most. So courses in biology, chemistry, biochemistry, organic chemistry, microbiology, genetics, things like that will probably be most relevant to firstly what's on the MCAT, but also some of the things that you'll learn in medical school. So I think that's the way I tackle the question. It actually doesn't matter, but if you're looking for something that would help you, probably something in the science realm.
Thank you, Justin. So our final question is from a student from SJR, and they're asking why it takes so long to create a vaccine. So this is more general, so once again, anyone can answer.
Not qualified to answer that question. But my general understanding is that I guess there's a lot of regulatory, like first of all, there's the research and development part where you actually have to figure out which antigen to target, figure out, like come up with something that actually works. And secondly, there's a lot of regulatory mechanisms in place to prevent harm to the public. There have been examples in the past, like with thalidomide, where there wasn't enough regulatory framework in place for approving drugs or vaccines and things like that, and that can cause actually a lot of harm. So they need to go through a lot of testing through to actually make sure that it's safe and beneficial. But as I said, not remotely qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, so I guess I could add on a little bit to that. I know so far of what I've learned, like I don't know the exact specifics going into vaccines specifically, but I know that in any sort of clinical trial, there's 4 phases, and you need to complete the first one before moving on to the second and third and fourth, and that's often why it takes so long. So I know phase 1 is you're just testing to see if it's safe, not even if it works, just is it safe? And that can often take a very long time. Phase 2 is, does it actually work? So that's when you're testing to make sure that like what you're expecting the drug or vaccine or therapy you're testing, does it actually do what you want it to do? And then of course you're adding on to the, does it continue to be safe? Phase 3 is on a wider scale. So before you were doing it on a smaller population. I think in phase 3, you're continuing to test for, is it continuing to work properly? Is it continuing to be safe? And is it working on a more large scale population? And then phase 4 is technically, I think, what a lot of like Pfizer and Moderna are on currently is, yes, it is now released to the public, but now they're asking the question, is it safe and effective to use on certain populations that weren't tested on to begin with, like people who are pregnant or nursing, or people who are immunodeficient, stuff like that. So it is a very long process, and those going through all those trials can often take a very long time.
From my experience, as I'm working at HSC and Concordia Hospital, the doctors told me that it's actually not going slow, it's actually going fast, basing it off on like other vaccines that are still currently in production, still in the process of getting accepted by multiple like countries or whatsoever, passing all these regulations. They said that it's actually one of the fastest vaccine ever made, and within a year. So when you think about it in that standpoint, they said that it's actually really cool because how, but then they're kind of in the line of saying that why is it too fast to make this vaccine? Some of them are not sure if they should take this vaccine, because when I was in the OR and intensive care unit, the doctors were hesitant on getting the vaccine themselves because they're the priorities, right? So they're the first ones who's supposed to get all these vaccines. So they're like, wait, what if it's actually bad? What if this and that, you know? But then again, it's, the vaccine is funded by the whole world, basically. That's why it's going really fast. So that's all I have to say. Like Justin said, I am nowhere near the authority to say anything about all these.
So thank you for all those answers. You guys answered them very thoroughly, and we really appreciate it. So I'm going to hand this off to Voke to just close up the session.
All right, thank you for such an amazing panel today. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your wonderful advice and inspiring stories. Thank you to Let's Talk Science for hosting this lovely event this evening with us. And last but not least, thank you to everybody who came, listened, and asked questions. If you weren't here at the beginning, this Zoom will be posted on our website soon if you'd like to check it out, and make sure you fill in and hand back those consent forms. While you're on the website, feel free to browse any of the other content we have up currently. And don't forget to check out our Instagram and Let's Talk Science's Instagram for updates on any and all new events. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys.